So relative to sentencing, I have a job. And what my job is to do is to hold you accountable. That's to punish you. It's to protect society. It's to find a way that you never come back here again, to rehabilitate you. And it's to deter others from engaging in like behavior. At the point of sentencing, I have to look at different factors. I have to look at your past record. And I'll agree with the defense that the prior record on its face is not as egregious as many cases I see in my courtroom. Quite often you see a background filled with felonies and violence. But what I said was on its face. When you look at the record as it's worked through in the pre-sentence investigation, I'll agree with the state that there are some red flags that jump out at you that show a level of violence that may have been a precursor. You know, I read through the defendant's version of what happened, and it starts off by indicating that he was skeptical to meet with the pre-sentence investigator because he did not receive a fair trial, and there's no reason to believe that this writer's report would be fair or impartial. You know, speaking about the trial, you know, there's a constitutional right to a trial. Every person charged with a crime has a constitutional right to a trial, and we do not in any way penalize anyone for going to trial. It's also a constitutional right to be represented by counsel, and Attorney Cotton did his job, which is just his job to represent Mr. Anderson. That's under our Constitution, the rights that exist. Now, you get credit for taking responsibility. You get credit for resolving a case early. You get credit for stepping forward and saying what I did was wrong. Because usually this first step in rehabilitation is taking of responsibility. And we didn't have that here. That's why it's important to read what his version is. So you heard him say today that he didn't commit this crime. What he said about the offense was that they met for food and drinks and they proceeded to his apartment, and that's pretty much all there is to say, he said. He offered no other information as to what transpired that night. He later said that he regretted he did not walk Miss Robinson to her vehicle when she left his apartment, and he believed it was at that point she was abducted by an unknown assailant, quote, either from the alley or from my backyard, unquote. When asked how he accounted for his presence in the area where Miss Robinson's vehicle was set on fire, Mr. Anderson said that he was set up. He stated he was in the area to buy marijuana, and quote, and all it would have taken was for someone to know where I lived and where I'd be in the morning, unquote. He would not tell the writer when or how he made the arrangements to purchase the marijuana, and then instead stated, quote, I plead the fifth. He then went on to point to things that he claimed were egregious errors at the trial. He claimed that there was a video that showed the photos on the phone and that the state only played stills of the video. That wasn't the evidence at trial. Am I correct?
Yes.
He claims that the still photo that showed his hand grasping Miss Robinson's breast was part of a video, and it was only a still that was shown. Incorrect, correct?
You're correct.
Okay. He indicated that at trial it was flaunted, the difference in age. And when I read that, I was somewhat shocked because I didn't really find that that was pointed out at all during trial. I mean, it was mentioned how old she was, but other than that, I didn't think that that was in any way an issue, and it barely even made it into my notes. So I thought my point is, I thought it was interesting how his view of reality seems different from what I find truly transpired. And I found it at numerous points during the pre-sentence investigation. You know, looking through this pre-sentence investigation, his viewpoints were very inconsistent with the reality. You know, I think the first issue relative to the mother's fiance, that was credibility. It sounds like he lied to law enforcement. He's asked, have you ever been involved in mental health treatment? Have you ever been in a mental health facility? Have you ever received treatment? He responds in the negative, but then we have the mother indicating that he was in an outpatient at Rogers. He indicates that he never made a suicidal attempt or had an ideology of SAID. But then we read about in the Navy how he was dismissed from the Navy due to a medical release, which appears to be related to the suicidal attempt in trying to hang himself. You have him saying about school, I did okay, but then you look at the history of how he did in school, and his grades were pretty abysmal. And just odd things, like he talks about how he purchased the home himself for $160,000, but the mother says, no, I told the dad to buy him the home. It just seems like he has a different view of reality than the rest of the world does. So when I look at the criminal history, which I'm bound to do, it reflects low-level misdemeanors, but the facts underlying those low-level misdemeanors are replete with points that raise your concern. I next have to look at whether he has a history of undesirable behavior, and I think I've charted through what basically I found in the pre-sentence investigation. As to his personality, character, and social traits, it appears that he has had employment. That's a positive. It looks like he jumps between bartending jobs at numerous facilities. But who is a person who would do this crime? What's the character underlying that? How can someone get to a point of inflicting such damage on a person, not only killing the person, but then dismembering?